Hi there, my name is Mohammed Abdul Aziz, and I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And back in the year of May 1st of 1938, on a Sunday morning, that's where I was born. At the time, my birth certificate was Rudolph Thomas Lewis Jr. I am a retired United States Air Force technical sergeant,
Right.
retired on October the 31st, 1978.
And you're also a Muslim, you're a revert or convert to Islam.
Yes, I'm a revert. Back in Saudi Arabia on November the 27th, 1990 is when I embraced Islam. And at that time, that was 34 years ago.
How old were you when you took your Shahada?
I was 50, I think I was 53 years old.
53 years old?
Yes.
Wow.
And I was in Pittsburgh, and I grew up on the Hill District, called in Pittsburgh, the Hill District in Pennsylvania. Everybody knows who knows Pittsburgh, that they know the Hill District. Hill District in Pittsburgh is right downtown Pittsburgh, where most of the African Americans were living at that time, back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, now even into today. So at an early age, I started grade school back in 1943. When my mother took me to Aliowal Elementary School, which is today still active today in Pittsburgh, Aliowal School. And so I can remember when she took me the first day in school when I was only 5 years old. And when I saw my mother leaving, I thought she was supposed to stay there with me in school. So when she left and I went out the back door, because all the guys, little boys, was watching me because I was a new kid. So I ran home out the back door and ran back home.
What year was this?
In 1943.
1943?
Yeah.
This is before integration, so it's still segregation area in America.
No, well, in Pittsburgh, it was not segregated.
It was not segregated.
No, at that time in the 40s, 30s to 40s, Pittsburgh was not integrated. There was discrimination, but it wasn't open like it was in the South. Okay? It was indiscriminately just done, oh, you can't work here, oh, well, hey, why did you hire this white guy and I had the job first? You see, so that was one of the things they would do. But I went to school, there was integration, I was going to school with white kids, all kind of nationalities when I first went to school. So there was no discrimination in the school. So what the teachers was teaching the kids, all the African American children had to learn the same thing, like the whites, the Chinese, the Japanese, whatever brand of people there, back in the days in the 40s when I first started school. Up until grade school, and then when I left grade school in the 50s, and I went to the high school, which was called Fifth Avenue, and that was only a short time I stayed there because we moved to another district in Pittsburgh, and that was back in 1953. 1953, that's when I went to a junior high school. Junior high school was called Heron Hill at that time. So I stayed there, doing pretty good in school, 53 to 56. When I graduated from junior high school, then I graduated with high honors to a school called the High School of Shenley High School back in 1956. I'm sorry, 1953 I stayed at Shenley High School 53 to 1956, where I graduated from Shenley High School in June of 1956. I was 18 years old.
Did you have a good relationship with your parents growing up?
Oh yes, I had a good relationship with my mother. At time, my father, I didn't know my father because he was working all the time in the mills, in the steel mills in Pittsburgh, and I didn't get to know my father because he was always working, and we never did see him that much because he was out messing around in the streets when he got paid every Friday, so we never did see him till maybe later that week. So I didn't have no rapport with my father, but me and my mother was with us all the time, me and my other two brothers, at that time coming back up in the 30s and the 40s, in the 40s and the 50s. So it was a little hectic at that time, and we were, you can say, scuffling because my mother was not working, because she was a young lady at that time, and my mother was only 18 years old when she had me. She was only 18 years old, and so she didn't know anything that much. She didn't work. She was just taking care of the boys, so the father didn't take care of her, so he was out in the street twiddling, diddling around. So my mother gathered us up the one day and just left him. And so that's where she met my stepfather, who at that time was a butcher in a Jewish store, and so he was the one who was bringing home the bacon and the meat. So
Literally, yeah.
and so that was where my mother got with him, and she had another set of kids, 4 other kids by him.
How many siblings did you have total?
There's a total of us. There was a total of 7. It was 5 boys, 2 girls.
5 boys, 2 girls.
Yes.
And how many from were your father?
My father, there's only 2. Me and my brother Joseph, Lewis. And the other, I had an older brother, he had a father in Virginia when she was 16. So when her mother gathered all her up when she was pregnant, and her father was very angry, so they moved up to Pittsburgh, where things were out of the South, and where people, the African Americans, were moving towards the North because there was no that outward discrimination during the 50s at that time. And jobs were good because Pittsburgh was known as the steel city of the whole world, not the United States. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania was known as the steel city of the whole world. They made more steel in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s than any country in the world.
Oh, is that why the football team is called the Steelers?
That's why the Pittsburgh is called, the football team is called the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yeah.
No, I didn't know that. Okay,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
So, was it? Do you think because of all the, the factory work, steel mills and all that, was there a lot of jobs in Pittsburgh?
There's a lot of jobs in the steel mill for African Americans. That's where they were coming from the South to work in the steel mills. If you could get a job there, but mainly a lot of blacks work in the steel mills, menial jobs or whatever. So, there were jobs, but there weren't that many jobs, locally, which were operated by the white majority of people in Pittsburgh at that time.
Would you say the quality of living, like, houses, were they more affordable back then?
Yeah, the houses were very affordable back in the days. We lived in a black neighborhood in Pittsburgh, but on our street, as I remember, there was only the Jewish clan was living with us on that street. So that was back in the 50s also. So during after World War II, a lot of the whites moved away from our neighborhood. That's why it was an integrated neighborhood. But after the World War II, they started moving to the suburbs, and the only one living in our district hills in our hill district was the Jewish. They had business there, and they were, you would say, they were mongering over the black money, giving them credit, food, anything you wanted, anything. The Jewish had the control of the economy there at that time in the black neighborhood. So after World War II, when things were getting better for the Jewish and they got enough money from the black unit, they moved from the black neighborhood, and there was only the African Americans living in that neighborhood, and they moved to a different suburb in Pittsburgh, where today that's where they still live, Forest Hills, and etc.
So okay, up to age, how long did you live in that house with your mother?
Well, I can remember in the projects. We moved in the projects back in the 30s, 40s.
What age was that, you think?
Oh, I was 3 and 4, 5 years, 4 years old.
Okay.
Then when my mother left, she had the butcher man Stanley Carroll. He moved us to a apartment on Wick Street in Pittsburgh, and that's when I was about 7 years old, 4 to 5, 6, 7. Then after Wick Street, then we moved to Morgan Street, which is the upper class up in Pittsburgh, where my stepfather bought a house for us at that time. After 705 Morgan Street, then that's when I left Pittsburgh when I graduated from high school in 1956. and went into the military, United States Air Force. I went to join the Navy, but the recruiter was not in his office at that time, so the Air Force sergeant asked me, he said, well, he won't be back until after lunch. Why don't you come on and I'll show you about the Air Force. When I did, that's when I enlisted in the Air Force. Instead of
How old were you then?
18 years
18
old.
years old?
18 years old.
So you wanted to join the Navy, but you ended up.
I end
Force.
up because the Navy guy recruiter was not in his office when I went to sign up in the Navy. So the next door there was an Air Force recruiter, and he hinted me to come over and he talked to him, and that's when I joined right there in 18. Joining the Air Force at that time because, like I said, unemployment for blacks at that time was very scarce, and so just coming out of high school, okay, I had no trade because just coming out of high school, but I wanted to go to college, and I wanted to be a doctor, but my mother said there's 7 kids here, so we can't afford you to send you to the University of Pittsburgh there in Pittsburgh, which is still today. For 8 years they didn't have the money, so since I couldn't find a job, so then at that time, that's when I joined. I said, well, I'll join the Air Force. I joined the Navy, then I finally wound up saying the oath for the Air Force. Left Pittsburgh and went to Lackland Air Force Base in Texas, 1956. And that's where I got my basic training. Got my basic training there in Lackland Air Force Base. After bivouac training, then they sent me to a technical school in Cheyenne, Wyoming in 1956 to learn a trade. So when I went to Cheyenne, Wyoming, they, at that time, even though discrimination was outlawed in the United States after President Truman's back in '45, it was still there in the military for all military African Americans discriminated.
Let's stop for a second. Okay, I want to go back to when you signed up for the military.
Yeah.
Of course. What did you tell your mom and dad, talk to them about it first?
Oh yeah, my mother was very happy since I was leaving. Since I couldn't get a job, she didn't want me to be in the streets.
Right.
Like the other kids, you know, they were dealing in everything, you know, crooked. So that wasn't, at that time, that wasn't my piece of cake that I wanted, because I said, I didn't want to go to jail, because at this time, if I didn't have a job, I wanted to do something constructive. So that's what, if there was no job, so the next thing was going to the military. Yeah. See, since I couldn't go to college, my mother didn't have no money to send me to college, University of Pittsburgh, which I wanted to be a doctor, for 8 years, and that was back in 1956. So unfortunately, I didn't get the chance to do that. So it was very, very hard, even though living in the North was very good for the African American, but it still was discrimination. Okay, that's why a lot of African Americans joined the military.